Welcome back to the channel, guys. Millions of Britons look at the Iraq War, the chaos that followed, the dead soldiers, the dead civilians, the broken trust, and they ask a simple question. Why isn't Tony Blair in prison? Not why isn't he unpopular, not why isn't he criticised, but why hasn't he faced criminal consequences? And the answer is brutally revealing, because it isn't just about Blair, it's about how the British system deals with power. First, there's the uncomfortable gap between moral guilt and criminal guilt. The Iraq inquiry, Chilcot, was devastating on process planning, intelligence, and the rush to war. It concluded the threat was presented with a certainty it didn't deserve, that peaceful options weren't exhausted, and that planning for the aftermath was disastrously inadequate. But Chilcot was not a criminal court. It didn't deliver charges. It didn't send anyone to trial. It delivered a political and historical judgment, not a legal conviction. That distinction is precisely where Blair survives. If you want to put a former Prime Minister in prison for launching a war, you need a clear criminal offence that applies in UK law, and you need a prosecutor willing and able to prove it to the criminal standard beyond reasonable doubt. And here's the problem. For the Core Act, starting the war, the obvious legal label people reach for is the crime of aggression. But British courts have repeatedly held that aggression is not a crime you can prosecute under domestic English law without Parliament creating that offence. In other words, whatever you think of Iraq, the UK legal system has not provided a straightforward route to charge a British leader for the decision to go to war. That's not a technicality, it's the whole game. In 2017, a private prosecution attempt targeting Blair over Iraq was blocked, because the court said there was no domestic crime of aggression under which he could be charged. People can scream war criminal until they're blue in the face, but the system replies with something colder. Show us the statute. Now, what about international law? People often say, what about The Hague, the International Criminal Court? The reality there is also grim. The ICC's jurisdiction is narrow, the evidential threshold is high, and it generally focuses on specific war crimes and crimes against humanity, not broad political decisions. And when it comes to Iraq-era accountability, even reporting at the time noted the ICC was not going to put Blair on trial, while scrutiny focused more on alleged conduct by forces than leaders. Even when allegations relate to UK actions in Iraq, the story gets lost in procedure, time and jurisdiction. We've seen years of investigation, inquiries and legal warfare where outcomes that leave most everyone dissatisfied. Families of victims, soldiers and the public alike. And there's another layer people don't like saying out loud. The state protects itself. Recently released files reported by major outlets suggest Blair was concerned politically and legally about how cases involving British forces might be handled, including sensitivity about international jurisdiction. Wherever you see that as a prudence or pressure, it reinforces the same public perception. When the system is threatened, it circles the wagons. So why no prison? Because the legal architecture isn't built for it, and because institutions have no appetite for turning the Iraq decision into a criminal precedent that could hang over every future leader. If you criminalise bad wars, you create a chain around the ankles of the political class. They would rather absorb public anger than create a tool that could be used against them later. That's the real scandal. Not that Blair's controversial, but that accountability is designed to be politically, not legal. Now, Blair himself has often said he takes responsibility for the decision to go to war. But notice how the word is used. Responsibility in British politics usually means speeches, reputational damage, maybe a difficult interview, then a return to the circuit of foundation, think tanks and global conferences. It rarely means handcuffs and prison term. And that is why so many people feel the country is run on two standards, one for ordinary citizens and one for those who sit at the summit of power. If you or I make decisions that kill people, we face the full force of the state. If a Prime Minister makes a decision that leads to catastrophe, we get inquiries, reports, memoirs and then silence. This is also why Blair remains toxic in the public imagination, because Iraq didn't just damage the Middle East, it detonated trust at home. It taught millions of Britons that Parliament can be consulted without being respected, that intelligence can be presented without being solid, and that consequences can be avoided if your position is high enough. So why isn't Tony Blair in prison yet? Because the system isn't built to put him there. Because the relevant offences are either hard to prosecute, not clearly available in domestic law for the core decision of war, or buried in international process. And because the British establishment prefers inquiries over indictments. The public call it injustice, the political class calls it how the Constitution works. And that is exactly why this question won't go away. Thanks for watching, guys. If you want more honest political commentary and don't want to miss what's really happening behind the headlines, hit that subscribe button and drop your thoughts in the comments below.